Well, good morning and welcome to the October 12th special meeting of the Public Disclosure Commission. We are having a special meeting today to handle a large number of requests for reconsideration of decisions that we have made in the past over submissions that had not been made on time. People are going to be telling us why our decision to fine them in most cases for missing deadlines is absolved by extenuating circumstances. So we will get started on that right after we do.
And then I'll ask other members of the management team to introduce themselves, and then other staff members can introduce themselves as they have roles in the meeting.
Kim Bradford, Deputy Director.
Jana Greer, Administrative Officer.
Sean Flynn, General Counsel.
With that, I think we can have others join in as they're called upon.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to note that Bill has a new book on his shelf that looks like a scintillating title that I'm going to have to start reading right after the meeting.
That's for promotional purposes. I have that.
Looks like a good read.
Are you getting kickbacks from Alan?
I just thought it would make a good impression here, replacing my River Magdalena or Dylan Thomas books with nice covers. I thought that one looked good for today's purposes.
All right. Well, the next item on our agenda is public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to make a comment to the commission today?
I have no one on the line, Commissioner. I know that there was a public comment submitted that I added to your folder, but nothing else besides.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our first item on the agenda, which is rulemaking. And this is a rule for a change of WAC 390-180-050 about commercial advertisers. Sean, do you want to lead us through the discussion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commission members. Right, so where we are with our proposed rules is that you've seen a draft of the rules we proposed. If you recall, at the end of at our meeting last month, we provided a narrative of the recommendations that staff would propose or propose to put in draft form, and we had a discussion about that. The commission generally approved that tact we were taking, and so we were asked to kind of put that explanation and that narrative into draft form. And what you're looking at now is the actual language of the proposed rules that, if it's agreeable to you all at this time, we'll submit to the code revisor to be published. And then there will be a period for public comment, and after which we can schedule or we will schedule the public hearing on this. And that's kind of following the requirements of the APA, and of course just simply good policy to have feedback on this. So I want to go through the particulars of this. I've received some comments from commissioners individually, and so you know, as I'm going through, feel free if there's any questions or you want to stop on some point to discuss with the commission. That'd be great. And really, what we're trying to do here is just hash out, you know, a good proposal that we get out to people. We'll hopefully get some good feedback. I think in our rulemaking process over the last couple of years, we've been really blessed to have some some good feedback. People paying attention to what we're doing has really helped to improve. So improve what we ended up adopting. So hopefully we're embarking on that same process. And also, just as a bit of background, as the Commission's aware, we've had a number of points where we've sought public comment on the general concept of these rules and the path we're going. So so the stakeholders and the public have been engaged for a long time in this process, but now we're kind of narrowing down to the actual language that we're here to produce. So this in no way is the final approval that the Commission's that we're asking the Commission to do. It's really just the next step to open up what you want to receive public comment on. And with that, I think what I'll do is I'll go through the rule just kind of chronologically and explain the places where we've recommended some change. One thing that I mentioned in the draft that you saw is in the first subsection, there is simply a definition of commercial advertiser that reiterates the rule in statute. This is something that the Commission added back in 2018. I've had the viewpoint that that creating redundancy in statute and rules sometimes creates opportunity for confusion. I think the purpose of putting it in there in the beginning is that you can kind of read through the rule and not have to search back and forth to get references. But in a law like ours that gets pretty technical in its interpretation, I just want to point out I'm not sure that we need or want that definition in there. At the very least, it does tend to make the rule a bit more verbose and a little bit longer. But I just want to point it out there. I didn't cut it out as a recommendation, but just for your consideration there. Subsection 2, there I want to spend a little bit of time on the proposed language we had here. At the last meeting, Commissioner Downing had reiterated a concern that's been in our minds, and we've heard as we've been looking at these rules is, well, what happens if a commercial advertiser has the obligation to respond to requests for their books of account at least in the digital, the way the digital industry works, a lot of times a commercial advertiser is part of an entire network, and so where the ad ends up to be published is not necessarily the place or the entity that sold the advertising. So if you're a member of the public, how would you know who to ask if you wanted more information about that ad? And so what we've proposed here is a requirement that supports where the rule stands now, which is we don't require a publisher such as the Seattle Times or some entity that has an online publication, and they may sell just space on their website where ads appear, but they may not really have much interaction with the transaction of how that ad places, but that we sort of shift the responsibility to the commercial advertiser who's providing the service of placing that ad on that website. And consistent with that, then we believe that if that's the case, if we're going to shift from the publisher to the entity that's providing the service, then that entity should also have some way of indicating to the public that they are the commercial advertiser and that they have a method of receiving requests. So the language that we proposed is intended to be flexible and I guess in some ways maybe a little open-ended. That's intended to not completely restrict the commercial advertiser and how they do things. Obviously, we're sensitive to the fact that advertising is, in many ways a visual or visceral media, and so we wouldn't want to infringe on on the ability of the advertiser to produce advertising in the way that they do. But in some ways, just to make sure that there's a reasonable method to indicate one of the methods of allowing the public to respond. Presumably it could be a link to an online archive that some of the social media entities have already created, and in other ways it could just be an address that a person could reach out to, or if there's some kind of online portal or something where requests could be filled out, applied for, and something of that nature. So that's a fairly new concept, at least how we're articulating it. Again, I think the issue's been there for a while, but I wanted to highlight that for sure because it's not language that you all have seen before. And it would be something that we would really encourage and be eager to get feedback on to see if there are some whatever issues there might be with this, maybe different ways of articulating this standard.
Comments?
No, I like it, Sean. I mean, I like the construct.
Okay. Well, then I'll move on to sub 3, which is just a different articulation of what we believe is already in the statute that's already in the rules, that that the books of account that a commercial advertiser is required to maintain are updated regularly on a daily basis, 24-hour period. That language is just kind of shifted up to make it a little bit more readable in the rule. There's not any intended substantive change in that part. Then moving on to subsection 4, the big, one thing to highlight here is this includes the methods to which a commercial advertiser can receive requests to inspect their books of account. And we have one method is by responding to a request with, electronically, so generally by email or something, if somebody asks for information, and then that can be sent out to the requester. The current rule requires that it's done promptly, and we just put a temporal limit on that. It's promptly, but within 2 business days. Commissioner Downing accurately pointed out that maybe the language needed to be cleared up there, and so the latest version that you'd seen makes it clear that we're talking about within 2 business days is kind of the limit of that prompt response period. And that's that's admittedly that's something that could be changed. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion with folks in the industry about this. This is one of the areas that we've looked at, and it's not set in stone that it needs to be 2 days. I think there's arguments to be made on either side of that. If this can be transmitted digitally in that, then commercial advertisers may be able to respond to that even sooner than a 48-hour period. We wanted to put the business days in there because there's an acknowledgement that these companies are businesses and they're not they're not regulated in the same way as campaigns are. So a business day seemed like a more appropriate measurement than simply 48 hours that could be that could include weekend time where staff is not available generally not available for the commercial advertiser. But then there's arguments too that it should be a lot longer than that it should be up to 2 weeks to respond to requests, and we've heard those arguments. I think given the nature of what political advertising is in a campaign and the in some ways the immediacy of it, it's when you're seeing it, it's when it's out there that it's most of interest to the public. And so looking at a shorter turnaround time would seem important, and as we believe is consistent with the existing rule as it stands now. So I just wanted to point out that's something that you can consider for whether that needs to be extended or reduced, and again are hoping to get some input on that and allow people to make their case to the commission about whether that needs to be changed.
Any thoughts on that?
No, if it were 20 years ago, I'd have concern about the time limit when there was something that dropped on the Thursday before a Tuesday election. But now that we have an election period rather than election day, that's not the same type of concern.
Yeah, I like the idea of having something in there that puts a fence around it. 2 days seems appropriate to me. There are a lot more campaign days than business days in a year, so making it business days makes sense. Okay, John.
Okay, I'll move on to the next section, and another one to highlight for your consideration is what we proposed is eliminating the current requirement that the commercial advertiser identify whether the advertising or what the advertising advocates for, promoting a candidate, opposing a candidate, ballot measure, or not. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I missed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me go back before I get to that point.
The extra days.
Yeah, the extra days, exactly. So the commercial advertiser under this new proposal would have an extra 3 business days to respond to a request if the sponsor of the advertising did not identify, or if the commercial advertiser had asked the purchaser whether they were buying or political advertising, and that purchaser did not disclose that fact that it was political advertising. And if those 2 conditions are met, then if a commercial advertiser gets a request for a certain political advertising, then it would have an extra 3 business days to respond in one of the acceptable methods, as like we just discussed. So that's something that you recall from last month was part of our recommendation, and I think it opens the door to the question of what responsibilities the sponsor may have in this, and that's something that still may be worth some more consideration as we move forward. It might be something, as we discussed, that would be appropriate for legislation. But I think the way that we recommended here, that this would be able to stand on its own, regardless of what we may require for the sponsor. This would give a bit of flexibility to the commercial advertiser, as well as incentivizing the commercial advertiser to ask for this information from the, as it's processing its business, to to get the sponsors to identify, you know, when something is political advertising, and therefore they know that they have the responsibility to maintain it in their books of account. So again, might not be the final word we have on the bigger policy that we're looking at, but it's also not a type of provision that would be dependent on some other action if we indeed, you know, wanted to pursue legislation to require some action of the sponsor.
Okay.
All right. Then moving on, and this is what I started to talk about before I had to go back. Now we get into what type of information the commercial advertiser is required to maintain. And the first thing that's on that list is that the commercial advertiser is supposed to name the candidate or ballot measure that's supported or opposed. We recommended essentially lifting that language and simply requiring that the commercial advertiser produce a copy of the advertisement itself. There was some discussion about, well, if the commercial advertiser is not essentially indexing or you know, identifying candidates or ballot measures or the campaigns that these ads are for, then it might make it harder for a member of the public to go through and find the type of the advertising that they want. You know, a lot of these requests can come in and say, please show me the ads supporting or opposing candidate X. And if the commercial advertiser is not required to essentially identify that in their books of account, it could make it harder to search for. We saw this as more of a balance, that if we were going to add that requirement, that the commercial advertiser isn't really in the business of determining content, and there may be many circumstances where the commercial advertiser isn't even looking at the content of the advertising, and so just simply having the commercial advertiser maintain a record or a copy of that ad would be sufficient. But as I articulated, I can see where there would be some concern that you might lose the ability to index or search if the campaign is not identified in the records themselves. So I'll stop there if there's any questions or comments on that.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I raised the question, I think, late yesterday with Sean and Peter about this. You know, a couple times in my life, I've tried to understand cricket. I've always been stymied by my knowledge of baseball getting in the way. When I look at this, I try to think about the way that requests come in, and I think in terms of public records requests, the way those are made by journalists and the way they're handled by agencies that receive them. So I'm not sure in this context how the requests are made, and so I'll be very interested to see the responses that we get, both from requesters and from the receivers of the requests. Whether they see this as workable, or if they've got some modifications they'd propose.
Actually, I like the change because I'm very aware, having been doing it myself, taking an ad, sending it to one group of individuals, intending that will favor the candidate, taking the exact same ad, no changes, sending it to a different group of people, hoping that will have an opposite effect. Whether or not I'm trying to help or hurt by the use of the ad depends in large part on who I'm sending the ad to, as much as the content of the ad.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and something to consider, that if the commercial advertiser is having to make that decision, it could have the adverse effect of, you know, categorizing things, and so if somebody's comes back and asks for it, they're not looking in the right box for it.
I mean, it could be appropriate to draw a line between naming the candidate or the ballot measure and whether it is supporting or opposing, and maybe not requiring the latter, but still requiring the identification of the campaign that it relates to. If that is important mechanically for either the requesters or the receivers of the requests, in order to quickly be responsive. What I said to Sean was I didn't want our rule to bake in any opportunities for either innocent confusion or deliberate obfuscation.
Yeah, that is a good point, and one thing to consider too, that if we were to keep that language in there, it's another thing we can look at as far as what the sponsor has to identify when they're purchasing that. So if the commission wants to go down that road and make some requirement on sponsors as they're purchasing advertising, then maybe part of that is to identify the campaign they're supporting or opposing. Obviously, for political committees, they've already have that in their registration. For independent expenditures, again, shouldn't be much of a burden on the sponsors, and then that would also help out the commercial advertiser if they're asking for that information and that the sponsors are required to give it to them. Then some of that confusion might be handled through that kind of mechanism. The last change we have then is at the bottom of the rule, and this is about the specific requirements for what a digital media or digital communication platform must provide. And this has been the subject of a lot of discussion, as the commission recalls. From last month, you remember our recommendation was to maintain essentially the same standard that we're asking for, which is the demographics of the population that's targeted. We decided to put in a little bit of, well, somewhat of a definition, I think, baked into that, because there had been some questions. It's like, well, what's demographic and what's interest related is generally where that line has been drawn. And there's no express bright line, but like in the examples that I showed to you, and even how some digital advertisers promote their own targeting, that the distinction between demographics and interest is fairly clear, at least in my mind and opinion of that. But, you know, adding some more of those categories within the example in the parentheses there, I would believe that those are not controversial, whether that's demographics or not. You know, I generally view it as, well, as we put there, the statistical characterizations of a population, and in some ways it's, you know, more of a static grouping than, you know, interest, which obviously are a little bit more amorphous, I guess, and can fluctuate a lot. So that was our attempt to not necessarily expand the requirements, but to at least answer some of the questions that arose about what is the extent of demographic information that's required. But as I said, I know this is a controversial issue, and we've heard a lot about this. And so again, I'll pause if there's any comments or feedback on that.
I'm a latecomer to the whole area, and Sean knows that I did send him a concern. Having played the games, I look at this and I have a concern that I don't think we would ask candidates, why did you choose to send this ad? We would, you know, we want to know what you said, how much money you spent, what were your tactics, you know, that sort of thing. But I'm looking here and seeing that if you give me enough factual details about who was targeted, then I can begin to answer the question that wasn't asked. of why did you send it to these people. And I know that we used to, in the old days, precincts were too big to be talking about targeting precincts as a practical matter. We were more interested in, within that precinct, what portion of the precinct, and is there a carrier route, for example, where I can start limiting that down? And can I use voter performances if they voted in 3 out of the last 4 elections, that sort of thing? There's a ton of information out there. And if you can aggregate enough pieces of information, you can make a pretty strong understanding of why they chose to send that. And I did tell Sean that I'm a latecomer to the discussion and I want to learn more about it. I think it is good information to have, and ultimately it should be available. I'm wondering if there might be some way that some of this information, rather than just being a direct pipeline from the mind of the candidate to their opponents, could be delayed until the final report, after the election is over. We'll tell you all the stuff. We spent this much money, and we bought this many Facebook ads, and this is the kind of stuff that Facebook does. All of that information is available in the same time it would be under this act. But specifically, who you were targeting and trying to get, who you did get a hold of, might be a step further than I feel comfortable going. I don't think it's the commission's job to ask the candidates, what were your strategies? Why were you doing what you were doing? It's the commission's job to say, make sure the public knows the tactics that you used and where you spent your money. So anyway, this is not going to keep me from saying we shouldn't go forward with this today and the whole process, but it is saying it's a concern I have that it might be going a step too far. If you get enough facts, I don't have to ask you why. If I get enough demographic type information, I really don't have to ask you why you sent it.
I'm not persuaded there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I think our general philosophy is that the public does have a right to know that, to understand why the targeting is being done by the candidates in the way that it is. And there is helpful information to be gleaned from that. I think the bigger concern from our point of view has traditionally been with what I think are legitimate concerns of the commercial advertisers about things that might be proprietary or intellectual property on their part, the way in which they make determinations of how to target these people and so on. And so we've tried to steer a course that would not run afoul of that, but at the same time would provide as much information to the public about the campaign's decision making.
Okay.
This is a difficult question, and obviously the line between what's enough and what's too much is a little bit blurred. I like what Sean has put together here as a way to sort of push the envelope and get some comments back. I share Alan's comment that there are there's proprietary information in terms of how people who manage and run campaigns do this targeting. At the same time, there is, I think, a need for some transparency, and exactly where that line is, I think, is something that we're going to be testing over the period of comments and beyond. So I'm comfortable with the way that it's written right now for the purposes of moving forward, and I'm looking for some robust discussion about where that line should be. Other comments? I want to go back to the beginning and to the first section and the question of, whether we kind of the Department of Redundancy of whether we copy the RCW into the WAC. And, my bias is not to do things like that. I think you're setting yourself up because it's really easy to make a change in the RCW and forget that you have the WAC. And now all of a sudden you've created an ambiguity about what you really mean. So my preference would be to delete the definition and reference it so that we say as defined in RCW XYZ, as opposed to actually doing the copying. All of this now is on the internet, and the ability to go back and find out what the RCW says if you've got the reference is trivial. And so I don't think there's any benefit to making it easier to see it all in one place. It is all in one place. It's on the internet.
I agree.
Other thoughts?
Well, I think just to stand up for Chair Levinson, she was the one that I think was always the advocate of including as much information for clarity's sake, so that the person utilizing it can do it as easily as possible. But there is the potential snag when one changes but the other doesn't. They always have to be kept consistent. But I think there is merit on both sides of that argument.
That's the trouble with arguments.
I will just add that might help clarify this a little bit, is that currently when you use the official version of the WACS online, when there's reference to a statute, it's a live link. So this, if you say as used in, instead of saying the act, we would say RCW 4217A005, then the person reading that who may be new to the area could click
Quickly
directly.
go.
Yeah, find out what that definition is, which might be sort of a best of both worlds approach.
Other comments, thoughts?
Chair, I just wanted to add, first of all, thank you for consideration of that. I felt a little, maybe a little sheepish bringing up the definition again, since I know the commission had voted on it in 2018. Either way, I think it would be fine. It's really up to your preference. And then for Commissioner Hayward's perspective on the demographics, that's something that we can definitely consider, and I think it's a really good thought. I don't know that we've heard of that proposal in the feedback we received. Obviously, there's been that concern that's been articulated, but I'm not sure that anybody has suggested, sort of a delay in the production of it. So that's definitely something we'll take back and consider. And of course, hearing the other commissioners' comments on that, something that we can look at further. But just want to let you know that was a very that proposal is very well was well taken, and it's something to give us something to consider and think about.
Yeah, I'll add on that point, Sean, that Commissioner Hayward, in your words, you may be a latecomer, but you're certainly a quick study, because in my mind, that's always been the crux of the issue, is that when does it go from information about the advertising to revealing strategy, which, I don't think is the role of the PDC, but the exact nature of the advertising services is, and that's the devil's in the details there and where you cross that line.
Thank you.
Are we ready with a motion?
I'll move that you go forward to the publication of the rule, the proposal.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second. And any further discussion?
Just so you're aware that if we go forward as planned, we'll have this published and set for a hearing at the December 3rd, or whenever that our meeting is in December, the first week of December. I didn't mention that date, but that's when the publication would include that hearing date.
So the public hearing would be in December, and then it would come back for final approval in January or February, maybe?
Well, yeah, you could approve it at the December meeting if you wanted, because you would have had the hearing at that point, and so you can go ahead and approve it. You can put it off till January if there's other like minor changes. If you do anything more significant than that, you might need to republish and have another public hearing. So there's no deadline on when you have to approve it, but you do have to have a certain period of, notice before the public hearing.
But if we delay too far, then it doesn't affect next year's campaigns.
Yeah, it gets a little bit problematic once you get kind of further into the spring, let's say, because the election cycle generally starts from June, but of course, we could see advertising even before that time. So yeah, I think that's definitely something to be aware of. We're hoping that setting the December hearing date will then move us closer to adoption of the rule in January or February, which should give us enough time to implement it then for the next election cycle. But if you hit a real snag, then you're pushing it back and kind of running up against the election cycle. That being said, as you're aware, we have implemented new laws and requirements, well into June. The foreign donor law, I think, went into effect in June. Before that, incidental committees, I think, came online earlier, or maybe I don't know if that one had when the effective date that was. But just to know, I mean, we can implement things later on, but it is probably better to have more notice to the campaigns and the commercial advertisers than less.
Well, I will push us to make a decision no later than January, because I think this is a significant enough rule change that it does have impact on planning for campaigns and planning for the commercial advertisers. And the amount of education and communication that we're going to need to do is not going to be something that's happening in a couple of weeks. It's going to take time and effort on our part to make sure everybody understands it. So I think it's incumbent upon us to really push to get this wrapped up as soon as we can. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of submitting this to the code revisor for publications signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and we have a proposed rule. Thank you all. Thank you, Sean, and Kim, especially for the work that you guys have done over the last, decade, to get us to the point that we're at right now. And more work to come, but I think we're making good progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Jarrett,
Yes.
we've had a lot of people join via phone, and they're all on mute at this time. Before you start, I just want to remind everybody that the chair will call case by case and use your *6 to mute when it's time for you to be heard.
Unmute.
Correct.
Yes.
And then mute again at *6 to mute again. Thank you.
All right. Brings us to enforcement. We're running a little bit late, but I think that's okay. And Tabitha, I understand that you are going to take us through Thrive Washington. Is that the first one up?
That is correct. And I'll just give I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I was just going to remind the chair that he might want to get his script ready for swearing in witnesses, including Tabitha.
Somebody seems to remember my lack of quickness on this one.
We're here for support, not
criticism.
Mr. Chair, this is Jennifer Hansen. I'm going to be presenting on behalf of Tabitha Blacksmith today as well. And so if you'd like to swear me in, so I'll do the help with the reviews and reconsiderations as well as the modifications this afternoon. So you can.
Well, why don't I swear both of you in right now?
Sounds great.
Perfect.
In accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you, Tabitha Townsend and Jennifer Hansen, swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving today is the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. All right, Tabitha, you're up.
Okay, so I know that Alan is a newcomer, so I just wanted to give a real brief overview here of what had transpired. The lobbyist employer brief enforcement hearing was July 1st, 2021. This was to review the alleged violation of RCW 4217A630, meaning that the lobbyist employer report, L3, covering calendar year 2020, was due by March 1st, 2021. It was found at that time that Thrive Washington had violated said RCW, and we are here now to hear the reconsideration. I don't know if you want me to go over any of the details in the memo, Chair Jarrett, before you guys vote if you want to reconsider.
Is there any interest to have that material reviewed?
I will put on the record that we received on September 2nd, 2021, documentation from Thrive Washington regarding their disillusion, which started in July of 2019 and was put on record as of April 30th, 2020. So they were dissolved as of April 30th, 2020.
And I think also you indicated that they engaged in no lobbying during the year 2020.
Correct. They had started the dissolution process in 2019 and therefore were not lobbying in 2020.
I would move that we reconsider.
Is there a second? I see a second. All in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye. Aye. As opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We will proceed to reconsider. Tabitha, do you have anything else that you want to add at this point?
I just want to add that I do believe we have the representative, Judith Andrews, on the phone. And if she is available, if she would unmute and let us know that she's here. It's *6 to unmute if you are available. And she was unsure due to other obligations today. So she did also provide written statement. If you would like, I can read it into the record.
Please.
Okay. This was received via email on October 6th from Judith Andrews. Dear members of the Commission, I served as legal counsel to Thrive Washington prior to its dissolution and am writing to explain the circumstances regarding this matter. Thrive Washington was a Washington nonprofit corporation exempt from federal income tax under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Thrive was formed in 2006 with the purpose of working with and complementing existing efforts statewide to ensure that every child in Washington is prepared to succeed in school and in life by enhancing parent education and support, childcare, preschool, and other early learning environments. Thrive operated a successful and effective home visiting implementation hub that works with governing agencies, private funders, and home visiting programs, supporting capacity buildings, innovation, and sustainability by providing training and technical assistance to home visiting professionals, as well as an effective advocacy program to encourage state and local governments to implement investments in high quality early learning, including childcare, pre-K, and parental support. In April 2019, Thrive entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Ounce of Prevention, an Illinois nonprofit corporation and 501c3 organization with a similar mission and activities, for the transfer of all of its assets and programs to the Once, a much larger organization. Thrive began transitioning its program activities and operations to Ounce and by the fall of 2019, it had discontinued all its activities, including advocacy. This included the termination of its contract with its lobbyist. The asset transfer agreement with the Ounce was executed in December 2019, and the closing occurred in January 2020. Thrive was legally dissolved in April of 2020. As a result of the transaction with the Ounce, Thrive discontinued all of its advocacy activities, including any lobbying in 2019. The organization has been dissolved for 17 months and has no assets. Thank you for your consideration of this matter. Sincerely, Judith Andrews. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Tabitha? Hearing none, are we ready with a motion?
I would move that we vacate the previous order and that no fine, no penalty be imposed.
Second.
Is there a second?
I think Nancy did.
Oh, I did. Second, sorry.
Sorry. I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The order is vacated. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to Sherry Appleton.
So, Mr. Chair, I will give an overview of this particular section, which includes all of the same filer type. Is it your preference to hear cases where someone is on the phone?
Yes, please.
Okay, excellent. So I'll give the overview and then we'll check to see if Sherry Appleton's on the phone. She indicated she might participate, but we're not sure. So this particular section of reconsiderations, the same thing applies. The commission will need to make a decision as to whether or not to reconsider and then to hear the matter and decide whether to modify the order that as it stands. These individuals were all elected or appointed officials who served at some point during 2020 and were required to file a personal financial affairs statement by no later than April 15th, 2021. They were found, all of them were heard at a brief enforcement hearing held on July 15th, 2021, and were found in violation of RCW 4217A 700 for failure to timely file the financial affairs statement. The specifics of each case will be brought up as we get to them regarding whether or not the individual had filed the report and what the individual penalty was at that time. And then if the commission has no further questions about the group that we're going to hear, we can check to see if Sherry Appleton's on the phone. Does the commission have any questions for me before we move on?
Questions? Hearing none, let's see if Ms. Appleton is on the line. I would just disclose that Sherry and I served in the legislature together, but I don't see that as being having an effect that would allow me to not make a good decision here.
And Mr. Chairman, am I on?
Yes, Alan.
Yes, I also would like to disclose that during my career with the State House of Representatives, I worked with Ms. Appleton, but I don't think that would cause me to have any concerns about voting one way or another.
So Ms. Appleton, if you're on the phone, if you could unmute yourself using *6 and identify. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person on the agenda who is participating, and we'll come back to Sherry Appleton at a later time.
So we should move on.
Perfect. So the next person is one of the cases that Tabitha Townsend will be presenting, so I will let her take over.
And I believe we have Kay Brown on the line. If you will unmute yourself to be sworn in.
I'm here.
Ms. Brown, in accordance with court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that testimony you will be giving today is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right.
Jennifer, do you have something that you want to say before we turn it over to Ms. Brown?
I'm sorry, Chair. It's actually me, Tabitha Townsend, again with this one. We're going to bounce back and forth on you. So I just want it to be understood that Kay Brown was a State Board or Commission member for the Shoreline Hearings Board during the calendar year 2020. Her term ended June 1st, 2020. And she has no prior violations. And there was information provided to you with the memo regarding some of the communication issues that she was discussing with us. She has now filed her F1. And so we are here to discuss the penalty.
Okay. Is there so how do we want to proceed? Do we want to make a decision as to whether we're going to reconsider, or do we want to hear from Ms. Brown first?
Well, I think she should speak first, and then we would decide if there was a basis to reconsider.
So Ms. Brown, what would you like to share with us?
Yes, thank you very much for granting me the opportunity to come before you on this matter. My case pertains to an order that the commission issued that penalized me $250 with $150 suspended for failing to file an F1 more than 1 year after I retired from state service. Because I didn't pay the penalty within 30 days of the order, the suspended portion was reinstated, and so I'm currently penalized $250. I have worked with your staff, and so you should have some documents in front of you. I checked with Ms. Townsend this morning, and she confirmed that they had been provided to you. The September 21st, 2021 email was basically my request for reconsideration, and it lays out a timeline there which might be helpful to you. And then I also provided an explanation in there. Then there's 2 or maybe 3 other emails from the director of the agency that I worked with, the Environmental and Land Use Hearings Office. And it pertains to a search that was made of my email box at the state of Washington. And it confirms that there was no notice from the Public Disclosure Commission pertaining to the F1 and me. And so you can take a look at those emails. The office conducted a pretty extensive search. So I just have a few key points here. I think the absolute key point here is I received no reminders of the filing requirement, no notice of the first hearing, no copy of the order that you issued, no invoice you sent me until September 20th, 2021. That was the first I became aware of any of this. And I filed the F1 on September 20th, 2021. So I immediately filed it as soon as I became aware of this. Second point is that I accept responsibility for my initial oversight in not filing the 2021 F1. I filed an F1 February 2020. This was 3 months before I retired. And I was thinking erroneously that this completed my duties with the Public Disclosure Commission. I even remember thinking that it was unfortunate that I had to learn how to navigate through that new system when I would not be filing again. Now, it should have occurred to me that I would need to report for the months that I worked in 2020 prior to my retirement, but it just did not. I did not have on my radar screen that when I was no longer working for the state of Washington, I would need to be filing forms with the PDC. As to the lack of notice, I did not think about changing my email with the PDC because I assumed I was done with the PDC requirements when I left my state job. I also assumed that if somebody needed to contact me, there would be no problem reaching me through my old office. I assume that if I did get emails at my old email address, there would be some notification to the sender that the box was no longer active and instructing them to get further information from the agency. I think this was a reasonable assumption since I worked with WATEC when they closed out my email box appropriately through state procedures. My old office, which is Eluho, has always known how to reach me since I retired. The PDC has always known how to reach Eluho. Eluho's mailing address is listed on the order that was issued and the invoice that was sent. According to WATEC, which conducted a search on my office email, nothing was received from the PDC at my office mailbox, which was the email address listed on all of the F1s I have filed previously. Under the penalty factors outlined in WAC 390-37-143, I respectfully request that the Commissioner rescind this penalty. I think the situation of my retirement during the time when my office and all state offices were struggling to figure out how to work remotely constitute mitigating factors. We all in my office went remote March 1st, 2020. When I came back into my office to retire June 1st, 2020, there was no exit process. There were no staff there. I received no help or assistance on this type of thing. Furthermore, I did not receive any filing reminders from PDC. Now, as I've said, WATEC searched my email box. I also would like to point out that I have a perfect filing record up to this point. I've never been late. I've never missed a filing. I take these responsibilities very seriously, and I immediately filed when I did receive notice. After 35 years of state service with no blemishes on my professional record, it would be very disheartening to have a penalty like this at the end of my career. I respectfully request that you rescind this penalty. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions of me?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any questions for Ms. Brown? Hearing none, what is the Commission's pleasure?
I'd go ahead and make a motion that we reconsider.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of reconsideration signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. That brings us to reconsideration. What is the Commission's pleasure?
I would move that we reconsider the penalty imposed and rescind it. Ms. Brown, I appreciate your long service. They're kind of cross themes in the comments that you make. The long service and the conscientious reporting during all of those years kind of undercuts the blame that you place on the PDC for not sending you a reminder for the obligation that you have. And I appreciate that in the middle of your lengthy presentation, you did include a sentence, "It should have occurred to me that I needed to file for those 4 or 5 months that I served in the year 2020. And I think that that is accurate. But I do think under the circumstances, including COVID, the remote working, and your good intentions, I think it's appropriate for us to rescind the penalty, and I will so move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of rescinding the penalty for Ms. Brown signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for your presentation and for all of your service to the state of Washington. It's appreciated by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reconsidering, and I do apologize for having made extra effort for your staff and your office, because having been on the other side of this thing, I know that all takes time. So thank you very much.
Most appreciated. You have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, now am I back to Tabitha or to Jennifer?
So, Mr. Chair, this is Jennifer again. So the next item on the agenda is for Oscar Casados, and Jerry Casados is representing Mr. Casados on his health is not allowing him to participate today. Jerry actually requested that we call her. My suggestion is to wait until the end of the other phone participants so that we don't take time out of their day or ours to do that. So we'd like to move on to David Haviland. I think he's the next one, which is Tabitha.
Yes.
Is it all right with you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, if David Haviland is available, it's *6 to unmute yourself so that you can be sworn in. He did indicate that he would be participating, so if we can just give him a moment if he's figuring out *6 to unmute. And he is not present. Would you like to continue hearing his, or would you like to come back to it later to see if he joins?
Let's come back later to see if he joins.
Then the next would be Charles Knudsen. That is also me. And if Charles is available, if he can *6 to unmute himself.
Mr. Chair.
Alan.
Yes, I would like to disclose that during my professional career, I did work a few times with Charles. I don't think it would have any impact upon my voting for or against a reconsideration, but I do in fact know him.
Is Mr. Knudsen available for swearing in?
Yes, I'm on the line. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Knudsen, pardon me 1 second here. In accordance with the laws of court regulations in Washington State, do you swear or affirm that you will, the testimony that you will give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. And if
Tabitha.
you could *6 yourself, Charles, until we come back to you, that would be great. It gives a little bit of feedback here in my line. Okay, so Charles was professional staff for the Office of Financial Management during the calendar year 2020. His position or term ended December 22nd, 2020. The respondent filed his final F1 covering January 1st through December 22nd on September 16th, 2021. And we are here to consider the penalty. If you have any other questions, there was documentation provided to you. I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Mr. Knudsen, what would you like to share with us?
Are you hearing me?
Now.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Jarrett, and members of the commission. For the record, again, I'm Charles Knudsen. I guess I want to begin really by expressing my sincere appreciation for the PDC team's good work, and your staff has been great to work with, and appreciate you all taking the time to hear me out this morning on my request for reconsideration on what I would call an email mix-up about my F1 report for 2020. And I believe it's similar to the case that you just heard. That mix-up meant that there was an attempt by the PDC to reach me on a Hotmail email account that no longer exists about an F1 form for a job that I no longer have. So I don't believe that the attempt to reach me was properly addressed because Microsoft had discontinued the Hotmail email service in 2012, particularly because the PDC does have my current email and my current cell phone and current mailing address in my PDC profile. But because of this mix-up, it meant that I didn't learn about this situation until I received a paper statement in the mail on September 15th, which was the very day that the fine was due. And so I didn't feel like I really had much of a time period that was reasonable to correct the error. And I think, especially given some of the extenuating circumstances, in my previous role, I was a senior advisor to Governor Inslee and was central to the governor's COVID emergency response. And as you can imagine, I was full throttle on that work and then switched jobs. Nonetheless, given all of this, I was able to remedy the situation immediately after learning of it within 24 hours. I'm very sorry about my role in this. I really take this to heart. And the good news is your team has all of my current contact info. I have no prior violations. And I will certainly work diligently to ensure this doesn't happen again. And I would be very much obliged if you took all of this into consideration and removed the violation from my PDC record. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen. Any questions for Mr. Knudsen from the commission? What is the commission's pleasure?
I would move that we reconsider this application.
I have a motion to reconsider. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of reconsideration signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. What is the commission's pleasure with reconsideration?
I move that we, I'm thinking what the term is that I should use, withdraw the penalty. Sounds like there was a serious miscommunication, perhaps even on our part.
So there is a motion to rescind the penalty. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of rescission signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. Knudsen's penalty is rescinded by a vote of 4-0. Mr. Knudsen, thank you for your time and your comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and the members. I appreciate your consideration today. Thank you.
Have a good day. Okay, Tabitha, Jennifer, who's up next? Jennifer, you're up.
Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is for Stephen Lawrence, and Mr. Lawrence indicated that he was going to participate, so I'd like to give him an opportunity. *6 to unmute yourself, Mr. Lawrence, if you're on the line. Noise and feedback, but I don't see Mr. Lawrence. Would you like to move on to the next person, Mr. Chair, and come back to Mr. Lawrence?
Let's move on.
All right. The next person is also mine, Maureen McKee. Miss McKee was also planning on participating. Miss McKee, *6 to unmute yourself if you are on the line.
You hear?
Oh, sounds like that's Miss McKee. Mr. Chair, I'll pass it back to you to swear her in.
Ms. McKee, in accordance with court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Okay. Jennifer.
So this matter before you today is Maureen McKee, PDC case number 94132. And I should note for the record that Ms. McKee is actually a judge and her current term expires at the end of this year. So I will refer to her from now on as Judge McKee.
I don't think that's probably right. This is Bill Downing. I would suspect the term runs through the end of 24.
Oh, perhaps. And maybe we can have Ms. McKee, Judge McKee, correct that on the record when it's her turn to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Downing. So Judge McKee served as Superior Court Judge for King County Superior Court during calendar year 2020 and was required to file the financial affairs statement no later than April 15th of 2021. She has no prior violations and has filed the report covering 2020 as of September 20th, 2021. She has provided information that was presented to the commission regarding the reasons for her request today for reconsideration. Her situation is similar to the others where she received emailed reminders, warnings, hearing notices in the order, and then was sent information through the mail regarding the penalty. And so if the commission has any questions for me, I will answer them. Otherwise, I will pass it back to the chair.
Questions? Hearing none. Judge McKee, would you like to provide some information to us?
Sure. Thank you so much for providing me with this opportunity. And I'll keep it brief. In August of 2020, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer and received chemotherapy, and then I had surgery in January. And then subsequent to the surgery, I received more chemotherapy and was undergoing daily radiation treatment in March and part of April. I did receive the reminders to file by April 15th of 2021. However, I just didn't even see them. And it was only when I received the notice in the mail on September 15th, 2021 of the penalty that I went back to my email, of course, saw these reminders, but they just weren't on my radar given my situation at the time. And so I didn't realize, or I didn't remember that I was supposed to file. But with that said, I fully recognize that I should have remembered. When I received the notice, I believe it was right around September 17th, 2021 or September 20th, 2021. I reached out to the PDC and then, as you've already heard, I filed. So I'm hoping that the commission will take that into consideration. But if that does not seem to be an understandable reason, I also completely understand that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge McKee. Questions for the judge? Hearing none, what is the commission's pleasure?
No, I appreciate that tone that was reflected in the note as well as the oral comment. Sorry to hear about the health situation. I should state for the record, although I previously labored in the same vineyard as Judge McKee, I don't think we're acquainted. I would move that we reconsider the finding of violation and the imposition of a penalty.
Is there a second?
Yes, Nancy.
I hear a second. Further discussion? All in favor of reconsideration signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. What is the pleasure for reconsideration?
I would, as I indicated, move that we vacate the finding of violation and the penalty that was previously imposed.
Second.
There's a motion to vacate and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of vacations signify by aye.
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 The motion passes. The penalty or the decision is vacated. Judge McKee, thank you very much for both your service, your time, and I hope you are restored to health and have a good term.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
And Mr. Chair, the next 3 items on the agenda are all ones that Tabitha Townsend will be presenting, starting with Darla Mullins.
Yes.
Okay.
And Darla did indicate that she was going to participate if you are available, please *6 and unmute yourself to be sworn in, Darla. Ms. Mullins?
Can you hear me?
Yes. And I'll turn her back over to you to Chair Jarrett for swearing in.
All right, Ms. Mullins, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And I apologize for not reading in the PDC case number on the previous ones that I've read into the record. This one is PDC case 93987 for Darla Mullins, who served as a school director for White Pass School District 303 during the calendar year 2020. Her current term expires December 31st, 2023. There are no prior violations. The respondent has not filed the F1 covering calendar year 2020 as of the date of my memo on the 5th of October. And if you have any questions for me regarding the information that was submitted to you, I am available.
Has anything been filed since October 5th?
Yes.
Hold that up.
It's
I didn't hear an answer to my question.
Oh, yes, it's filed.
October 14th. Oh, no, hang on one second. Sorry.
October 11th.
October 11th.
Correct. So yesterday, Ms. Mullins submitted her F1 that was required to be submitted earlier this year. So it is here.
Other questions? Ms. Mullins, would you like to make a comment, provide us some information?
Yes. First of all, thank you to the commission for hearing me today. And thank you to Tabitha for being so helpful. And I apologize for not attending the hearing on July the 12th because I did not know about it. The emails that were sent to an email address that was not working. My superintendent actually set up the email for me so that I could just get board information through, that kind of information through that email. It did not work. And I would go to my tech guy several times and say, that email isn't working. And finally ended up just giving up. And so emails were sent to my old work address, which I worked at White Pass School District for 31 years and then retired and then was elected to the board. So with that being said, a large amount of time went by where I was not getting the emails. Then Tabitha happened to research and find a personal email for me and emailed me on there to let me know. And so then I got in contact with her and tried to fix everything, which now I think it is, but it's kind of been a nightmare. I have terrible phone service, which my call got dropped about 3 times while I was waiting to be on with you folks, and have terrible internet service. I have to go down to the district office of my school to do the Zoom meetings for the board meeting but with all of that being said, I don't have a fancy explanation. It all boils down to, it falls on me. I mean, I'm the one that needed to take care of this. When I got on the school board, I didn't realize I was going to have to do an F1. I'm just kind of like, wow, that's really necessary for a little school district where, it's an unpaid position and you're, anyway, it's just kind of uncharted waters for me. So, again, ultimately, it falls on me. I mean, I can give a million reasons why, but in the end, it falls on me to take care of it. So all I can ask now is that the penalty be reduced or rescinded. I'm a poor retired school employee. So that's all I've got. I just thank you. Thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. Any questions for her? Hearing none, what is the pleasure of the commission? I am not hearing a motion to reconsider.
I'll move that reconsider. I'm sorry, I lost my ability to access the materials momentarily, and that's why I'm fumbling around here, but I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second? The motion fails for lack of a second. That concludes our discussion unless there is another motion. Hearing none, that concludes our motion on Ms. Mullins. Ms. Mullins, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, and thanks for your service both as an employee and as a director of the school district. Jennifer, are you next or is Tabitha next?
Mr. Chair, Tabitha has the next one as well.
It's still me. I have Janice Sethny Brake, PDC case 94063, who is participating today. If you could *6 yourself to be sworn in.
Good morning. I'm present.
Ms. Sethny Brake, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving today is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So Ms. Janice Sethny Brake served as a water and sewer commissioner for North Beach Water District during the calendar year 2020. Current term expires December 31st, 2023. The respondent filed the F1 report covering calendar year 2020 on September 16th, 2021, and also amended the F1 report on September 26th, 2021. And that amendment was following a question that she had asked of me, and I found out information for her. So she included information that had not previously been included. The reconsideration today is for a financial hardship. And if you have any questions for me, I am available.
Any questions for Tabitha? Hearing none, Ms. Sethny Brake, would you like to provide some information to us?
Yes, sir. I did not receive any notification from the PDC reminding me to complete the F1, and I have submitted and completed all F1 filings as needed over the 13 years that I have served as Water District Commissioner. So it is something that's important to me, but in this pandemic year, we have suffered all kinds of setbacks as a water district, with all of our customers, at least a third of our customers affected by financial hardships, and even our general manager getting COVID and staff. So we've been juggling all kinds of problems. So I would hope that the board would be flexible in understanding in the need for us as public servants to receive those commission reminders from the commissioners. So I did some research, and have discovered that in one of the communications with Tabitha that the PDC was getting its email from an obsolete email address that was posted on our profile page, filed by the office manager. Ooh, I don't know where that came from, sorry. The office manager of our organization has, on a regular basis, just hit renew, renew, renew. And he was using an email address that was, that none of our commissioners had been using since the very beginning of our district 13 years ago. It was something that we used, it was gbreak@northbeachwater.com. And I also note that all of the other commissioners in prior years had suffered from PDC latency as well. We relied on some last-minute reminder to get our F1s filed. In fact, we had a conversation reminder with one another during those times. Hey, you got to get this in, got to get this in. So as secretary of the board, I've taken 2 positive steps that we put on the January 1st agenda for our every meeting. A reminder for commissioners that we have this April deadline to file to file our F1 with the PDC. And to have that reminder occur in 2 meetings, January and February, so we get a heads up. Instead of waiting to receive a reminder, I ask folks that during this PDC, during this pandemic, reminders are essential. We all have an enormous amount of stress on us. My husband has just developed dementia, and I am suffering the pangs of caregiver blues and trying to figure out how to solve all my problems there. I thought he was going to die last month, and we had a $10,000 2 holes in the roof in April. So if I might have missed your notice if I had received one, but I did an investigation of my emails and had not received anything except one entitled PDC alleged violation, and this was August 17th, and that was the day that my husband was diagnosed with a displaced retina, and it required sending us and traveling 3.5 hours either one way or the other, and not knowing where to go and what to do and how to deal with this. So I probably overlooked the violation status. I did not receive any other notifications. So I humbly request that you review this case. I have taken 2 positive two positive steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. One, that it's put on our agenda, and secondly, in our next meeting, we will be meeting with the with our tech support team, find out how we can forward those email addresses to our actual email addresses so that it doesn't happen to any of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate the fact that you're taking some proactive steps with the agency. It's one of the places that I think we need to do a better job of getting support for people who need to report from the institutions that they're serving in. Any questions for Ms. Shonbracki? What is the commission's pleasure? So I think Bill is muted, but I think he made a motion.
Yeah, I would go ahead and make a motion that we reconsider the imposition of penalty. I do so in light of the family health issues that were recounted in some detail in Ms. Stephanie Brake's written submission, and also acknowledging the steps that she's taken to prevent future violations amidst the ranks of the water and sewer district people.
No second.
I have a motion and a second to reconsider. All in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. What is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration?
For the reasons just alluded to, I would move that we rescind the penalty that was imposed.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to rescind. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you
Cynthia
all.
Brake. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, and your service on the commission.
Thank you all. I appreciate very much. And I appreciate your work. We will do better in the future. My commissioners, my team, my board will not be missing their deadlines.
I appreciate that, and thank you for that. Okay, who's up next? Tabitha, you're up next.
Yep, I have Sheila Sisney, PDC case number 94202. She has indicated that she was participating. Sheila Sisney, if you are available, please *6 to be sworn in.
I am here.
Okay, Ms. Sisney, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
Yes.
Perfect. Tabitha.
Okay. Sheila Sisney served as a school director for Darrington School District 330 during calendar year 2020. She resigned from her position November 19th, 2020. She has filed her final F1 report covering January 1st through November 19th. She filed that on August 17th, 2021. And I am available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Tabitha? Ms. Sisney, do you have comments that you would like to make?
Sure. So the reminder emails must have been going to my school email address, and I quit checking that. I had a daughter diagnosed with leukemia in July of 2020, and so then from that point on, I really wasn't participating in my school board anymore. Of course, obviously, everything else became a back burner, and I just didn't even pay attention to the emails. Everything was about getting my 3-year-old through chemo treatments and stuff. And so then when I resigned, I didn't even think about the F1. I just assumed that since I was no longer on the board, I didn't have to worry about it. And as you know, just the back burner, everything just became so, I had tunnel vision, and everything else just became less of a priority. But then as soon as I did notice that it was supposed to be filed, I went in and filed it.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Well, just the obvious one. How's your daughter doing?
Oh, she's doing so great.
Good.
She's got
Good.
8 months clean follow-up checkup.
Good. Excellent. Well,
thank you.
I would go ahead and make a motion for reconsideration at this point. It was quite a distraction and a commendable response to that, and thereafter to the obligations to the PDC.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second to reconsider. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. What is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration?
I'd go ahead and make a motion that we vacate the finding entered and the penalty imposed at the brief administrative hearing.
No second.
There's a motion and a second to rescind. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Cisney. And it is great to hear that your daughter has recovered, and you have a good day and year.
Great. Thank you so much.
And Chair Jarrett, just to clarify, we were vacating the order. That was the motion. Is that correct?
I misspoke. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I believe the next one is Jennifer's.
Yes, it is. So the next item on the agenda is for Thomas Stanton, and Mr. Stanton indicated that he was going to participate. Is he on the line? *6, please, to unmute yourself, Mr. Stanton. I think you muted yourself again, Mr. Stanton. *6 again, if you will. There we go. Is that you at the 509 area code, Mr. Stanton?
Yes, this is me, yes.
Okay, I will pass you over to Chair Jarrett to swear you in.
Mr. Stanton, in accordance with the court rules and Washington laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth?
It is. That's
okay. Jennifer.
All right. So this matter is for Thomas Stanton, PDC case number 94214. Mr. Stanton was served as a fire commissioner for Chelan Fire Protection District number 3 during calendar year 2020. His current term expires December 31st, 2025. He has no prior violations and was found in violation of not timely filing the financial affairs statement at the July 15th brief enforcement hearing. Mr. Stanton has since filed the F1. It was submitted on September 15th, 2021, and the commission has been provided information as to why Mr. Stanton is requesting a reconsideration of the order and penalty assessed. And if the commission has no questions for me, I will pass it back to Chair Jarrett for so that Mr. Stanton can make a statement. Any questions for me?
Hearing none, Mr. Stanton, what would you like to share with us?
well, sir, thank you for this opportunity. I've been a fire commissioner since 1983. I have never missed a PDC report. In December last year, my email got hacked, and it wasn't until January of this year that I realized it when I started getting calls from people that it was impacting. I immediately canceled and stopped using the email. After getting a new email that my children told me, which was the safest to get, I started to change my contacts. That in itself is a daunting task. I probably told our secretary of the fire district to change my email about the end of January into February. Because February, I was changing my email address. I had a post office box also for 40 years that I was changing because I had sold my business and I just didn't want to be associated with that business to confuse people. And that created a problem too. And that's why I got a late notice on the physical address because the post office, it's the mailbox problem. Anyway, I feel that our fire district secretary, I told her about the email change, and I think she just forgot to send it to you, just in the confusion of business and life and everything. Okay, I'm not blaming my secretary for the failure to notify the PDC commissioner, but I kind of only point out maybe a change in the system to give the annual notice to report a different venue. Email notice isn't always reliable. Number one, because of the insanity of emails and all this hacking going on. But maybe if in a timely manner that I know it's in your procedure to just do emails, that if you don't get an email response from somebody, maybe send out a postcard or something to do it in a timely manner so we can file. I'm kind of old school, and I live in an area that doesn't have reliable internet service, and I'm considering not having this service to eliminate an expense since both myself and my wife are retired. Thank you for your time. Please reconsider my dilemma regarding this offense that was not intentional in any nature. Thank you.
Is there are there any questions for Mr. Stanton?
Well, I'm just curious, Mr. Stanton, you said that you've been filing regularly since 1983. That's about 35 plus years. I'm curious why you would need a reminder of that annual obligation that you, for a large part of your life, you had accepted.
Life is quite energetic and crazy at best, and I mean. No, I can't remember. Somebody tells me something, it just gets on the back burner. I'm sorry.
Okay. In the earlier years, did you file by the April 15 deadline, or did you always invariably only file late after getting a reminder? Or?
No. I always, when I got a notice, or my secretary told us to send it in, we sent it in immediately without prevail.
Okay.
Other questions? What's the pleasure of the commission? I'm not hearing a motion to reconsider. So we shall close the matter of Mr. Stanton. Thank you for taking the time to share with us, Mr. Stanton, and for your service over the last 35 years. And have a good day.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
The next is Mr. Thornton, and that's Jennifer.
It is actually Tabitha Townsend, and I don't believe Mr. Thornton indicated that he was participating.
If that's the case, why don't we take a break and come back and cycle through the list again after the break.
Okay, we will do that.
So we will take a 10-minute break at this point and reconvene in 10 minutes. Mr. Thornton, and that's Jennifer.
For all of those that are going to stay on during the break, you're welcome to stay on. If you're on via phone, please Commissioner?
Hey.
Hi, I'll wait for a few seconds before we come back.
Yeah.
Down here.
You still have a minute and a half.
Okay.
Well, let us proceed. Now, so we got all the way down to Dale Thornton on the list. And Mr. Thornton was not available, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Mr. Chair, would you like to skip forward to the candidates who are requesting reviews? All of the ones that are on the line here today appear to be part of that group. We could hear those and then move back to those that are not participating. And then also we need to call Jerry Casados as well. We skipped over that. That way, if we run out of time before the lunch break and reporting modifications, we could always come back in the afternoon when no one else is participating. Does that sound like a good plan?
That sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to the agenda item for the candidate review. Mr. Chair, would you like me to read in to the record what's happening, or would you like to make a statement on the record and then let me give an intro?
Go ahead.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is for the candidates who are requesting a review of a, apologize here just a moment. These are candidates who are requesting a review of a case that was heard at a brief enforcement hearing held on held on August 12th, 2021 for failure to file the C1 or the F1. The C1 would have been, the candidates would have been found in violation of RCW 4217A205 for failure to file the C1 within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate or no later than June 4th, 2021. And failure and a violation of RCW 4217A700 for failure to timely file the personal financial affairs statement or F1 within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate or no later than June 4th. All of the candidates that are being heard today are requesting reviews of the previous order, either the violation itself or the penalty or both. All of them were missing both reports, the C1 and the F1, and their individual assessments, penalties that were assessed, and any suspension will be read into the record as well, or are already provided to the commission. And we have at least 4 of the individuals participating today, 4 of the 5. And so, Mr. Chair, if you would like, we could hear, I believe that we have Mr. Chappell on the line, and that is one that I will be presenting. And so, Mr. Chappell, if you would unmute yourself so that you can be sworn in by the chair, and then I will present your information.
Mr. Chappell, in accordance with the rules, court rules, and Washington state laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Okay. Jennifer?
Excellent. So this is PDC case number 95337 for C. William Chappell. As I mentioned before, he was found in violation of RCW 4217A205 and 700 for failure to file the C1 and the F1 within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate. He was found in violation, and an order was issued imposing a $500 penalty that would have been $250 per report, with $200 suspended. The suspension time period would have allowed him to pay and file. Mr. Chappell has no prior violations and has since I apologize, I skipped over the part saying what he was a candidate for. He was a candidate in the 2021 election for city council member of the city of Duval. And he has since filed the C1 on September 14th, and the F1 was also filed on the same day. And I'm available for any questions that might need to be answered that aren't in the written materials. Otherwise, I will pass it back to Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Hearing none. Mr. Chappell, what would you like to, I'm sorry, Bill.
One quick question, and either one can answer it, but I think Jennifer said he was a candidate, but is it accurate to say that he is a candidate?
Commissioner Downing, you're always bringing up the very hard questions that I can't answer when I'm filling in. I do not know the answer to that, so I'm hoping Mr. Chappell will answer.
Okay, Mr. Chappell, what information would you like to share with us, beginning with the answer to Commissioner Downing's question?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, Commission. I am currently a candidate for Duval City Council and am currently running. I also ran in 2019, where I also filed timely and correctly. The reason being why 2019 was different than now is because I thought, and incorrectly, now that I have reviewed the rules and regulations, I thought that it was only required if you were going to be spending money. So on that campaign, I spent money on signs and brochures. I have reused those for this campaign, so I did not spend any money or raise any money on this campaign, and I incorrectly thought that I did not have to file the C1 and F1. So basically, I throw myself on your mercy, apologize. I rectified the situation as soon as I knew. You may have a question of why I didn't rectify it earlier when I got the notices, and that's because I did not notice them. You notice the notices when they say there's a $500 fine. And so I rectified the situation immediately, reviewed it, and realized that I am in the wrong. And I think I would hope that my prior history of doing the correct thing and my apology for this one would possibly change the ruling.
Any questions for Mr. Chappell? What is the commission's pleasure?
Actually, I do have a question. In your written submission, you indicated that there was an address mistake. Was there a long period of time between the use of the previous address and the use of the current address?
Thank you for asking. I moved from that address in just at election time in 2019, so about October, November of 2019. So I was using that previous address during my last election, and I was unaware. In fact, I reviewed my filing for this election, and I did use the correct address. So I don't know. I don't know how the commission got that old address. It was from my old filing, the 2019 election filing.
Was that the only filing that has been submitted to the PDC?
I'm sorry, the only F1 and C1 filing?
Yes.
Not as of now, no. I have filed for this election season. I did it the day after I noticed that I was in trouble with the commission.
Okay.
So at this point, you have both filings for both elections.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the commission?
Well, I would go ahead and make a motion that we reconsider the penalty imposed at the brief enforcement hearing. I would intend, if we do reconsider, to move that we affirm the finding of violation, but that increases the suspended portion of the penalty from $200 to $400, leaving $100 to be paid. Right now, I'm just moving that we reconsider.
Motion to reconsider. Is there a second? I hear a second.
There is, and I would also concur in the proposal to increase the amount of the suspension.
Okay, that's my motion.
Compliance.
So I have a motion to reconsider. All in favor of reconsideration signify by aye.
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 Ayes have it. That brings us to the second part of Commissioner Downing's motion.
And just for the record, it was to confirm the finding of the violation at the brief enforcement hearing and the imposition of a $500 penalty, but to increase the suspended portion from 200 to 400 on the same conditions.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Mr. Chappell, thank you very much for taking your time to speak with us today, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Jennifer again. I believe that we might have the next respondent on the line, James Cho. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. James Cho, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay.
On the line. Yes, I'm on.
Yes, on the line. Mr. Cho?
There are two Jameses here, and this is James Cho, C-H-O-E first, and then Mr. James Njoroge.
So, Mr. Cho, if you're on the line, if you would pause for a moment so Chair Jarrett can swear you in.
Okay.
Mr. Cho, in accordance with court rules and Washington state laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Jennifer?
So this matter is for James Cho. This is PDC case number 95363. Mr. Cho is a candidate. I just looked it up, Mr. Commissioner Downing. Mr. Cho is a candidate for Hospital Commissioner of Kittitas Hospital District number 1. It appears that he won in the primary election. He is a first-time candidate and has no prior violations. Mr. Cho was found in violation of RCW 4217-205 and 700 for failure to file the C1 and F1 within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate. And that violation was found at the August 12th brief enforcement hearing. He was assessed a penalty of $500 with $200 suspended based on filing and paying within 30 days of the order. Mr. Cho has filed the C1 and the F1 on September 22nd, so both reports have been submitted. And the commission has been provided information as to why Mr. Cho is requesting a review of his case today, and I will pass it back to Mr. Chair. If anyone has any questions, I am available.
Any questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, Mr. Cho, what would you like to share with us today?
Yes, I'd like to thank the commission for hearing this case. And I originally filed on May 18th to the hospital commission position. Unfortunately, I was terminated at my current employer on May 20th, so within a few days. And after that, I decided to withdraw my candidacy. And I notified the PDC as well as the local candidate office. And during that time in June, July, my mother-in-law was going through a transition as well. And so I was helping move. And so given that I terminated my candidacy, I did not check my email for the filing and reporting. And so I'm hoping the commission can reconsider and hopefully rescind the penalty fee. I'm still actively looking for employment. So hoping that could help with reduce the penalty.
Thank you. Any questions, Bill?
You did actually withdraw the candidacy?
I didn't do it in the 1 week period, but I made it afterward. I think I sent a termination letter to the PDC and as well as notifying the local offices here or the local branch.
Do you think your name is going to appear on the ballot or not?
It will, because there was only myself and another candidate, but I informed the candidate that even if elected, I would just not accept the position.
Okay.
And Commissioner Downing, this is Jennifer again. I wanted to confirm that we did receive a notification, an official notification from Mr. Cho indicating his termination of campaign. And you are correct that his name will appear on the ballot. However, he has done what he can do at this point to withdraw with us as well. So we would support a modification if the commission decides to review this and modify the penalty. And that termination was submitted to us. It was signed on August 2nd, 2021.
Mr.
Other
Cho,
questions?
yeah, who are you planning to vote for?
I think my opposition is Matt Altman.
Okay. That didn't directly answer my question, but I'll leave that to the privacy of the voting booth.
Oh, yeah, no, I would go for Matt because he's
Okay.
a good.
Okay.
Okay, so what is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration?
I would move that we reconsider and then ultimately vacate the finding and the penalty.
My apologies. I would like to interrupt. I'll let John Meter weigh in as well if he thinks I'm incorrect, but I don't believe with reviews that you're required to do a two voting process, that you can just modify. I believe that is true. These are reviews rather than reconsiderations.
Yeah.
Oh.
If they've met the time frames, yeah, you don't have to go through the reconsideration part.
So these ones that we're hearing right now are reviews, so they have met the time frame and are able to be heard as reviews.
Excellent, thank you. That makes it much more efficient. Then I'll go ahead and make the substantive motion that we vacate the finding and the penalty that was imposed at the brief administrative hearing.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to vacate. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Cho.
Thank you very much.
Good luck in the voting booth.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next individual on the agenda is the other James, and I'm going to attempt to say his name as he unmutes himself. This is James Muchina Narogi, and he is on the line if you'd like to swear him in.
Mr. Muchina Narogi, in accordance with court rules and the Washington state laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Jennifer.
So this matter is for James Muchina Narogi. This is PDC case number 95365. Mr. Narogi was found in violation of 4217 A205 and 700 for failing to timely file the C1 and the F1 within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate. At a brief enforcement hearing held on August 12, 2021, he was assessed a penalty of $500 with $200 suspended based on filing and paying within 30 days. Mr. Narogi is a candidate for school director for Bethel School District 403, and my apologies, Commissioner Downing, I did not get a chance to look up to see if he was actually made it through the primary, so I will look that up, or we can ask Mr. Narogi to confirm. Mr. Narogi has no prior violations with the PDC and has not filed the C1 or the F1 as of today. I did review that information earlier this morning, and I'll review it one more time to make sure we haven't received any filings in the last several hours. If there are questions for me, I'm available. Otherwise, I will pass it back to Chair Jarrett for the additional testimony.
Questions of Jennifer? Hearing none, Mr. Muchina Narogi, what would you like to share with us today?
I would like to share that when I got this message, I was so shocked because I was not looking for any office. I was just applying for a job. I wanted to become a substitute teacher. I just moved to Washington State. Unfortunately, I don't know what I did on my computer. I did apply for that for the office. I did not understand anything. I've been following up, and I got shocked when I got a letter. And that's when I called them. I told them I was not filing for this thing. I don't understand it. And then she told me that she tried to work. The staff there told me she tried to work it out. And then the other day she told me that I have to appear to explain to you that how it went. I was not applying for any position like office, because I just came from New Jersey, and I wanted to work as a substitute teacher in that office. I was not planning to run for any office at all.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Muchina Narogi? Hearing none, what is the commission's pleasure?
Well, we sort of have to take at face value what Mr. Narogi is telling us today. It's an odd story. It sounds like the plot of a movie where somebody becomes elected president by mistake, where they didn't intend to run. They think the gardener maybe, and so it may be worth following up after today, just with the Bethel School District, to make sure that everything is in order, and that Mr. Narogi be considered for a substitute teaching position, but not for a school board position, which is consistent with his intentions and desires. I'll go ahead and make a motion that, assuming the validity of all that we've been told, that we vacate the findings and the penalty that were imposed at the brief administrative hearing.
Mr. Chair, this is John. Did Mr. Narogi get sworn in? Did I miss that?
Yes, he did.
He did.
Okay, thank you.
And
Is there a second to Bill's motion?
There is a second to this very interesting dilemma.
I'm waiting for the screen treatment, green lighted.
Yeah.
Further discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion to vacate signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you for spending some time with us, Mr. Narogi, and good luck with your teaching job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is for Melvin Taylor, and I heard him indicate that he was on the line, and that is one that Captain is presenting.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, are you there?
Yes, I am.
In accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving today is the truth?
Yes.
Proceed.
Okay. This is PDC case number 95410 with Melvin Taylor, who was found in violation of 205 and 700 for failure to timely file before June 4th, 2021, or within 2 weeks of becoming a candidate. The findings were in the amount of $500 penalty with $200 suspended. Mr. Melvin is a candidate for city council member for City of Aberdeen. And I did check, moving on to the general ballot. The reports, both the C1 and the F1, have been filed as of September 2nd, 2021. And we are hearing this review for financial hardship. I'm available for any questions.
Questions for Tabitha? Hearing none, Mr. Taylor, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, first, I would like to say good morning and thank you guys for your time and consideration of this issue. I have financial hardship. So I had an illness and I came down with COVID. I got COVID and then I lost my job. I currently just started working again at a new job. I'm behind on all my bills. I'm trying to get everything caught up. and I just have a lot of things on my plate that I'm trying to get caught up with, and I apologize for my untimely filing of the situation. At that point in time, like I said, prior to that, I had an illness. I have anxiety and depression, and it really just took me over, and that's how I ended up losing my job. So I've just had a lot on my plate.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Taylor. What is the commission's pleasure? Lost Bill. There we go. Do you have a motion, Bill?
No, I didn't. I was, sorry, I was looking at something else.
I am hearing that the review fails for lack of a motion. So we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that finishes the list of reviews except for Mr. Carpenter. Is Mr. Carpenter here?
I did not see him on the list, and there isn't anyone else that's joined us that I can see. Jana, is there anyone that you can see that's joined us since?
No, I have no additional call-ins at this time.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, we could, if you want to, finish up Mr. Carpenter and then move back
let's
to
do that.
Considerations. Okay. And Mr. Carpenter, I believe, is Tabitha Townsend's.
Yes. And this is PDC case 95341 against Dennis Carpenter. The review is of the findings from the brief enforcement hearing where we found him in violation of 205 and 700. We imposed a $500 penalty. Dennis Carpenter is a candidate for city council for the city of Hoquiam. Did move on to the general ballot. It does show that we received a photocopy of a termination that we don't normally accept a photocopy. We then received the paper copy after the deadline for receiving it to affect the hearing. That would have been August 12th. We received the paper copy on August 19th. But due to receiving the original photocopy, the PDC staff is asking that we vacate this September 13th order, as there was an intention of terminating the campaign in a timely manner. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Tabitha? Are we ready for a motion?
Tabitha, could you restate that last sentence that you just said?
The part where we're recommending that the commission vacate the September 13th, 2021 order, or the part about the intention?
You just answered my.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So the candidacy has actually been terminated. Is that the determination?
For PDC purposes, yeah, it wasn't terminated properly to be off the ballot.
So another one of those situations. Okay.
Correct.
All right. And has he indicated that if by a fluke or otherwise he were to prevail on the election, that he would decline to accept the position?
That is part of the termination document that PDC has them complete. So yes.
All right. Well, I would move then that we go ahead and vacate the finding and the penalty that were imposed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. So that completes all of the reviews. And I would assume that we would now want to go back to the previous list and do the reconsiderations of the folks who are not here.
That would be my recommendation as well, Mr. Chair. There's only one ahead of Oscar Casados. That's for Sherry Appleton. It would make sense to hear Sherry Appleton's information first and then move into calling Jerry Casados, who is representing Mr. Casados. I believe Jerry is his daughter. I could be mistaken on that. Would you like to do that and then move through in order?
Why don't we do Sherry, and why don't you call Jerry while we're doing Sherry?
Perfect. And Jana, are you able to call Jerry Casados while we're doing that, while I'm presenting Sherry Appleton?
I am. Unfortunately, you guys will hear the call online here. I will call that number directly from my work phone first and then let her know I'll dial her in separately.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jana. So the next item on the agenda is a reconsideration, and just as a reminder that the commission will need to make the two-part motion and voting. One to reconsider and one to decide whether they wanted to modify the order in any way. So this is Sherry Appleton, case number 94203. And again, just as a reminder for the public's benefit as well, these are individuals who were elected or appointed officials that were required to file by April 15, 2021, a financial affairs statement disclosing activity for 2020. And at a brief enforcement hearing held on July 15th, 2021, Sherry Appleton was found in violation for failure to timely file the F1 and was assessed a $250 penalty with $150 suspended. Sherry Appleton served as a state representative for Legislative District 23 and the State Board Commission member of the Commission on Judicial Conduct during calendar year 2020. Her term as state representative expired on January 11th, 2021, and her term as State Board Commission member expired on June 16th, 2021. She has no prior violations and has filed the financial affairs statement, including activity not just for 2020, but I believe she also has filed a final report so that she doesn't need to file again next year. That report was submitted on September 16th, 2020.
Sorry, but the person you called has a voicemail box.
So, and I'm available for any questions about Sherry Appleton's case.
Any questions? What is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration?
Do we get bounce backs if emails go to an incorrect email address? I've been meaning to ask that all day.
So we do, Commissioner Israelis. Most of these individuals, we did not receive bounce backs, so we assumed that they had received the emails from us. In Sherry Appleton's case, she would have been originally receiving emails at an official email address that she was using. And then I believe, I could double check here, but I believe we also had a personal email for her. We tried really hard this year to make sure that we were not sending emails to only a jurisdiction email address if we knew that it was no longer in use. For Ms. Appleton, she was actually in office through the beginning of this year.
But the person you called has a voicemail.
I'm sorry. when we were trying to communicate with her. So, we did not receive any bounce backs that let us know that she was not receiving our emails.
I just want to step in and speak generally. It's not about any specific case, but we sometimes, just like in our personal lives, sometimes you get a bounce back, sometimes you don't. Obviously, we follow up if we do. We go to great lengths to make sure that we have staff spending hours upon hours upon hours calling people. We try every email address we have. We pay for a LexisNexis type service so that we can track down contact information people. We go to incredible lengths, and the law, as requested by the commission a few years ago, specifically says not only do you have a duty to give the commission your email address, you have a duty to update it quite quickly. And as you know, we use Freshdesk as our ticketing system to communicate with people about complaints or matters. And when we send an outside email from Freshdesk, which is pretty much every correspondence that we have with filers, everybody's Freshdesk signature says, it is the law that you have to provide us with an email address and that you have to update it. It is your duty to do so. So on the one hand, it's their duty, and we do everything we can to tell them it's their duty. And then on the other hand, we go well beyond what is required. And I'll just add as a quick footnote that, of course, if somebody, like we've heard from one or two people, if you don't use email or don't have internet access, there is a way to request an exception from that.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Easterlist, I just verified, it looks like we had 2 email addresses on file for Sherry Appleton. One was her legislative address, which of course was no longer available to her, I'm sure, after she left office with the legislature. And then we also had a personal email address, a Comcast address that we used.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions?
Hello?
What is the commission's pleasure with reconsideration? I'm not hearing a motion. Okay, how are we doing with getting to Mr. Casadas or Ms. Casadas?
I have her on the line right now. Are you ready for her now?
I believe so.
Okay, Ms. Casadas, if you could hit *6, that will unmute your phone and you'll be on the line in the hearing.
Mr. Chair, would you like to swear her in as a representative of Oscar Casados? And
yes, have we got her on the line?
We do, yes.
Ms. Casados, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Jennifer.
So this matter is for Oscar Casados, PDC case number 93968. Mr. Casados was also found in violation of failing to file the F1 by April 15th. At a July 15th, 2021 hearing, he was assessed a $250 penalty with $150 suspended. Mr. Casados served as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner for Adams County Park and Rec District number 1 during calendar year 2020. His elected term expired on December 31st, 2020. He has no prior violations. Mr. Casados, although he served in 2020, there is some communication which has been provided to the commission regarding some very serious health issues that began at the beginning of the year. And the F1 has been submitted as of September 17, 2021, I believe, with assistance possibly from Jerry Casados. And so the final report has been done. I don't believe that Mr. Casados is continuing in any kind of elected or appointed position in the future. And I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Questions for Jennifer?
No, sir.
Ms. Casados, what would you like to share with us today?
I'd just like to share that he has had a lot of health issues, and basically that's it. And I appreciate the fact that you called me instead, because I really don't think he could have been able to navigate through the prompts and such.
Any questions for Ms. Casados? What is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration?
I'd move that we reconsider this.
I have a motion to reconsider. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of reconsideration signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. What is the pleasure for reconsideration?
I'd move that we rescind the penalty given his significant health problems and inability to complete the information has now been completed with the assistance of a family member, and I just think it would be appropriate to rescind the penalty.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Ms. Casados, thank you for spending time with us today, and our best wishes for your father's health.
Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless you. Bye-bye.
That brings us to Mr. Haviland.
Thank you, Chair Jarrett. This is PDC case 93992, which was heard July 15th, 2021, where Mr. Haviland was found in violation of RCW 4217A 700. The penalty was entered as $250 with $150 suspended. The respondent is asking to have that penalty reviewed. David Haviland served as city council member for the city of Aberdeen during calendar year 2020. The current term started June 10th, 2020, and is current per the jurisdiction's entries into the PDC system. The respondent states that he left office January 2021. The report has now been filed. It was filed later on October 5th, 2021, then the memo was completed. So that is an update to the information you received. It was not marked as the final F1 and is covering January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. And so if in fact there was any time served in 2021, he would be filing a final report to cover that time period. He had a unique situation where he was asked to resign his position due to employment. And he asked that you take that into consideration, as well as his family medical matters. And I'm available for any questions.
Questions for Tabitha? What is the commission's pleasure with regard to reconsideration? I am not hearing a motion to reconsider. So we shall move on to Mr. Lawrence.
And Mr. Lawrence is one that I will be presenting, Mr. Chair. This is PDC case number 94107 for Stephen Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence was required to file the financial affairs statement by no later than April 15th, 2021, and was found in violation of failure to timely file. I had a brief enforcement hearing held on July 15th. He was assessed a $500 penalty with $250 suspended. The reason for the very high penalty is because Mr. Lawrence has a prior violation that was considered when giving a base penalty for him at that brief enforcement hearing. Mr. Lawrence served as a city council member for the city of Airway Heights during calendar year 2020, and his term expired on December 31st, 2020. Mr. Lawrence, I believe, planned on participating today, but since he did not, you have been provided his written information and his request for review, which includes information regarding the reasons for his request as being a financial hardship. $500 is the penalty that was assessed, again with a $250 suspended, and his inability to access his email. Mr. Lawrence did indicate that he has resigned from office. It sounds like there's a little bit of discrepancy as to when he meant to resign versus when the jurisdiction indicated that he resigned. We have tried to rectify that before today's hearing, and we can follow up with that as well after the hearing to make sure that that is addressed and appropriately updated. Mr. Lawrence has submitted his F1 as of, my apologies here, he submitted it on July 26, 2021, so quite a bit earlier than today's hearing. And I'm available for any questions you might have about his case.
Questions for Jennifer?
Has he concluded service to the city of Airway Heights?
He has. The only discrepancy is the date at which he has resigned. He indicated some an earlier date than when the jurisdiction indicated that. So we haven't quite resolved that entirely. So we will continue to follow up with that after the hearing, regardless of what you decide.
Is it a day or a week or several months? I mean,
he indicated that he stepped down from the position on January 1st, 2020, so at the beginning of last year. And the jurisdiction does not have that date. If you'll bear with me a moment here, I will look quickly to see when the jurisdiction, it might take me a moment. If you want to continue on to something else, I'll come back with that information in a moment.
Any other questions for Jennifer about Mr. Lawrence?
So the Commissioner Israelis, the jurisdiction still indicates that he held office through the entirety of 2020. So we were trying to determine whether there was a mistake made by Mr. Lawrence or a mistake made by the jurisdiction, and we have not been able to come to an entire conclusion. Tabitha Blacksmith, who is going to present this today, has been working on that. So
it sounds plausible that it was a typo.
It is possible, and we, as you have probably noticed, we rely heavily on cooperation from the jurisdictions, both to tell us who's in office, to give us contact information for those individuals, which we utilize, and then also to give us the term dates for those individuals. And those are not always up to date. The jurisdictions don't always update them, and so we. It
sounds to me like the jurisdiction said that he served through the end of 2020, and he said that he left office on January 1st.
Correct.
And put 2020 in when he meant 2021.
That is possible, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Regardless, he has filed a report that covered 2020, regardless of his intention. And technically, he would have been required to file even if he only served 1 day in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indicate that he has a prior violation. Did he have a fine imposed, and was that paid?
He does have a prior violation, and I'm sorry, that's information that I'm sure Tabitha Blacksmith would have been able to give you off the top of her head. Again, it'll take me a moment to look it up if you want to move along. Do you need that information before you decide whether to reconsider?
It would be helpful to me.
Okay.
In the
My
mean,
apologies for delay.
I was going to say, in the meantime, I would go ahead and make a motion that we reconsider. I am persuaded that there is legitimacy to this individual's claim of a hardship. I draw that from the substance of the F1, where listing a number of creditors to whom he is indebted. He indicates on one, I thought tellingly, as to the balance. You look it up, I don't dare to. So I do believe there is legitimacy to the hardship claim here. So, my intention would be, if we reconsider, to move that we increase the amount of the suspended portion of the penalty to $400, leaving a requirement that he pay $100. And then I would intend to make that motion regardless of the answer to the question that Jennifer is researching.
So I've heard a motion to reconsider. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to reconsider, but understand that I also want the answer to the question of what the penalties were and whether they were paid in the past.
And Mr. Chair, I have that information before you move on to a vote if you'd like. He was assessed a penalty of $100, and that $100 was paid. So he was not sent to collections, and there's no suspended amount or reinstated amount on that case. So it's been closed.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, I have a motion to reconsider. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We will reconsider. Bill, you have a motion on reconsideration.
The motion was that that we affirm the finding of violation that was made at the brief enforcement hearing, that we impose the same $500 penalty, but that we suspend $400 of that rather than the $250.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the revision of the suspended amount to $400 signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We have suspended $400. And I think that brings us to the end of our morning agenda.
I have one more, Chair Jarrett. We have Dale Thornton.
Oh, Dale Thornton, you're right.
And that is PDC case 93983 for reconsideration of the July 15th brief enforcement hearing findings, where Mr. Thornton was found in violation of RCW 4217A 700, and penalty assessed was $300 with $150 suspended. Dale served as school director in the Keona Benton School District 052 during the calendar year 2020. His current term expires December 31st, 2023. There was a prior violation, which is why that initial penalty is higher. The report was filed July 2nd. Prior to that hearing, however, there was no statement of understanding entered into, and so we did proceed to the hearing. Mr. Thornton is asking for the review as stated in the written materials provided to you due to medical issues and him being unaware of the hearing or penalty. If you have any questions, I am available.
Any questions regarding Mr. Thornton? Hearing no questions regarding Mr. Thornton, is there a motion? I am not hearing a motion to reconsider, and so I will restate that I think this brings us to the end of our morning agenda. And,
Right.
we are actually ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I wanted to thank you for your patience with me filling in for Tabitha Blacksmith. She would have had all the information available to you at her fingertips, like Tabitha Townsend does. And so I appreciate that work that they do, and thank you for allowing me to fill in. Not that you had a choice, but.
Oh, you did fine. You did fine. You guys always do fine. I am going to recess our meeting, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock to take on the reporting modification issues that are in front of us. And we will have a half an hour to be able to do lunch on our own, as it used to be said. Anything before we leave?
No,
Hearing nothing, we are recessed.
Fred, just a caution,
Oh.
I have to be off the phone by 2, so if we're lagging a bit, now that we have Alan on board, you should have plenty of people to make a decision, but hopefully we'll be done before 2.
Yeah, we will try not to lag.
I was going to say, does that mean that we should keep him from talking so that we move more quickly?
And look what I got in the mail today.
All right, good book.
I think Alan is going to get a lot of residuals this week.
Oh yeah.
I hope you're all receiving signed copies of that book.
For all those that are going on to break, if you will turn your cameras off and turn your mics off, and we will go to break. Just a moment. Commissioner, you are live.
All right. Welcome back to our afternoon session of our special Public Disclosure Commission meeting on October the 12th. This afternoon, we'll be looking at requests for reporting modification. And Jennifer, you're going to be leading this, so are you ready to start?
I am, Mr. Chair. We have 4 applications today and 4 participants, so I will assume that all 4 people are on the line. So it makes sense just to go in order of the agenda, if that is all right with you.
Yes.
Perfect. The first request is for John Horch. Is he on the line? If you could unmute yourself by using *6. Excellent. And
I am here.
Perfect. And the chair of the commission will swear you in, and then I'll present your information.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, are you finding your script?
Yes, is Mr. Horch, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Jennifer?
So the request today, the first on the agenda is for John Horch. And I wanted to note that I made an error in the year of his election. Mr. Horch is actually running in 2022, and I had indicated he was a candidate in 2021. So I will make that correction to the cover sheet and repost that. He is a candidate running in 2022 for sheriff in Clark County. Mr. Horch is requesting a modification today to not disclose his personal residential address, as well as an additional piece of property where he and his family vacation or otherwise spend recreational time. He has served as a deputy sheriff for quite some time, several decades now. and has indicated some safety concerns and has cited in the written materials provided to the commission ahead of time a specific instance of someone who he interacted with in his official capacity as a deputy sheriff, and then ended up with someone related to that individual at his home. This is a situation that the commission has discussed in the past, where if Mr. Horch was an actual elected or appointed sheriff, he would be allowed to use the alternative allowed for sheriffs, prosecutors, and judicial office holders to disclose his address. He is a candidate for that office and has served as a deputy sheriff in his capacity for 32 years. And so if the commission decided to grant this request, Mr. Horch would be disclosing his address similar to the way that he would if he was an elected or appointed official. And then this matter would, of course, come back to the commission after the election if he's successful next year. And I'm available for any questions.
Questions for Jennifer?
If he's successful next year, wouldn't he automatically be qualified for the exemption?
Oh, yes, I apologize. You are correct, Commissioner. So this would not need to come back. So it's just today's request that needs to be heard.
Okay. Other questions? We're ready to hear from Mr. Horch. Mr. Horch, what would you like to share with us today?
All right, good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm not sure how many I'm speaking to, but good afternoon from Vancouver, Washington. That was a pretty good summary. Yes, I am a candidate for next year's election. And as probably most of you have seen in the last few years, it's been a little bit different with law enforcement and other officials too, elected officials, of people going to people's residence. And we've had that happen more with law enforcement in our area down in the Portland metropolitan area. The current sheriff had some people show up at his residence last November during some protests and whatnot. So I am asking for safety concerns, and I have had somebody a few years ago show up at my door after they found out where I lived to confront me about a situation that happened years ago, and it caught me off guard actually. So I am aware that people can still look up addresses, and there are ways they can still find them, but I thought at least making it a little more difficult of not putting the two addresses that I have on the PDC filing is my request. It is a safety concern for myself and my family. So that is my request.
Thank you, Mr. Horch. Questions for him? Not hearing any questions. What are the commissioners' pleasure?
Well, I would go ahead and make a motion that we grant the request for modification. Quite honestly, I think it was an oversight on our part when we proposed and when the legislature approved the change to the law, having it not apply to candidates for Superior Court, for judicial positions or sheriff positions, but to those that are successful. It really it sets up a requirement that we go back and do retroactive orders later on after the locking the barn door after the horse is out, basically something that's impossible. And so I think it would have been more sensible had we had the foresight to think to include that in the legislative proposal a couple of years ago. So it seems to me that a candidate such as Mr. Horch, who from the looks of things is likely to prevail in the election, and who has gone ahead anticipatorily and filled out the F1 by stating that he has a single family home in Vancouver and the vacation cabin in Cougar, and that's all appropriate as it should be. So I would move that we grant the motion for modification, or the request for modification.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Horsch. I appreciate your spending the time with us this afternoon.
All right, thank you very much, Commission. Take care.
Next up is Pam Orabau.
That is correct, Mr. Chair, and I believe we have Ms. Orba on the line as well. If you're on the line, could you use *6 to unmute yourself? Perfect. And then, Mr. Chair, if you want to swear her in.
Ms. Orba, in accordance with the court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving today is the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Jennifer.
This request is being made by Pam Orba. She is a candidate for the 2021 election for school director in Central Valley School District 356. Ms. Orba is requesting a modification to not disclose her residential address. She has cited some previous interactions, court documents, no contact orders with her ex-spouse who has not only threatened her, but has also physically assaulted her. I didn't know if Ms. Orba was going to participate today. And so I did do something that the commission has also talked about in the past with regards to how much information that you would like to have or need in order to make a decision regarding a request such as this. Ms. Orba had provided enough information to me to be able to do a little research on my own of public records. She gave me the name of her ex-husband and the general location, so I was able to confirm that yes, he has court documents and arrest records that confirm the information that she has attested to. And so I don't know, the commission hasn't quite determined whether that is sufficient or not, but I went ahead and did that. And she has agreed to recuse herself if a matter comes before her after she takes office if she's successful. She did make it through the primary election, and in addition, her documents would be exempt from public disclosure, as with Mr. Horsch as well, although with Ms. Orba, she provided a little bit more information that might be might present a personal risk to a reasonable person. That's also something that the commission can decide. And if the commission has any questions for me, I'm available.
Questions for Jennifer? Ms. Orba, what would you like to share with us this afternoon?
The request still stands. My ex-husband was abusive. He, excuse me, threatened to kill me. We had numerous restraining orders at the time taken out, and he violated the restraining orders even when I had the restraining orders. He has since, honestly, the last few years left me alone, but he lives in the area, and I still am fearful for him. I do try to limit my address from people that know him. Like his dad still talks to my children, and so I just don't let anybody that might have contact with him know where I live. So I would appreciate this consideration, so that as a previous requester, I understand that if people want to look hard enough, they're able to find my address, but to make it more difficult for them to find my address would be very much appreciated.
Any questions for Ms. Orba? Hearing none, what's the commission's pleasure?
I move we grant the waiver.
Second.
There's a motion to grant the waiver and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The waiver is granted. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Orba, and good luck.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration with this. I appreciate that.
And this brings us to Mr. Rosenbaum.
And I believe that Mr. Rosenbaum is also on the line. If you could unmute yourself using *6.
Good afternoon.
Perfect. Mr. Chair, if you want to swear him in.
Mr. Rosenbaum, in accordance with court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Perfect. Jennifer.
Mr. Rosenbaum is a current city council member with the city of Mercer Island. He was elected in 2019 and his current term expires in 2023. Mr. Rosenbaum is requesting a partial modification related to the disclosure of his residential address because of specifically cited, and he gave some information that was publicly available as well regarding some threats that were made to he and his family, specifically to his spouse who serves in a position that that is not required to file the financial affairs statement, but he is required to disclose his information and of course hers on his financial affairs. And Mr. Rosenbaum, I presented this as a new and retroactive reporting modification because he has been in office and his current information has been available and was available until this request was made. We put a hold on it until the commission could hear his request. So if you grant his request today, you could make it retroactive and we could work with Mr. Rosenbaum to go back to his previous reports and replace the address that is there with, as appropriate, with either an acceptable alternative to his address, or if the commission denies his request, we'll leave it as is. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Jennifer? And I should disclose at this point that Mr. Rosenbaum represents me on the City Council of Mercer Island, but I don't think that that has any implication as to my ability to decide the case. Rosenbaum, do you have anything you want to share with us today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the commissioners. Thank you for your service to our state. I'd really like to thank Jennifer for working with me quickly to get my request on your agenda for today. I shared some more details in my filing, but just to briefly recap, about 2 weeks ago, the fourth and final defendant in a federal case of stalking and harassment against my wife and others was found guilty. This individual led a conspiracy to plan to mail threatening letters to journalists and civil rights advocates. The letter we received was extremely terrifying and also included a known address of my family. We're really grateful that because of the work of the FBI and the U.S. Attorney, all the individuals involved in this have been apprehended and convicted. However, we know that the threat from these types of groups is likely to have been heightened due to our participation in the trial. We both testified at the trial, and my service on our city council was raised under questioning by the U.S. Attorney's office. As you can imagine, we're taking additional steps to protect our safety. These types of groups are known for their skilled use of the internet. So one step we are taking is attempting to remove our home address from listings where possible. Thank you again for your service and consideration of my request.
Thank you. Any questions for David? Hearing none, what is the commission's pleasure?
I'll move that we grant the request for partial modification and allow the filing with the redaction of the residential address, the substitution simply of the type of residence and the locale, presumably Mercer Island. And further, the motion would include the retroactivity that was requested.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And thank you for your service, David, and for sharing with us today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Matthew Siegel. Jennifer.
Yes, and we have Judge Siegel on the line as well. If you could unmute yourself, please, and be sworn in.
Are you there, Judge?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Judge Siegel, in accordance with court rules and Washington's laws against perjury, do you affirm or swear that that the testimony you will be giving today is the truth?
I do.
Jennifer.
Thank you. This request is being made by Judge Matthew Siegel, who was recently appointed to a position with the King County Superior Court. His current term expires in December of 2022. Mr. Siegel is requesting a modification that would exempt him from disclosing business customers or clients that paid $12,000 or more during the reporting period, so the previous 12 months prior to his appointment, to his former law firm, Pacifica Law Group, LLP. The rule allows judges and former law firm members to disclose what they're aware of and to affirm that, disclose the clients that they're aware of, and also to affirm that they no longer have access to the list of clients. Judge Siegel has done that. I did request one follow-up piece of information from him. In his application, he had indicated that he believed that there were no payments from the King County Superior Court, and I wondered if the commission might request him to affirm that there were no payments, and so I asked him to be prepared for that. And so if the commission has any questions about that, I will allow Judge Siegel to speak for himself. And by the way, when I requested that information from him, I asked about King County rather than King County the King County Superior Court. So there was a discrepancy there that was, looks like it was my error when I requested that information from him. If the commission grants Judge Siegel's request, it could be granted for the duration of his current term and the F1 that he would file through the end of his term. So it could be granted through the reporting period that he through the end of next year, and then he would need to reapply for a renewal of that modification until 2023 at the earliest. And I'm available for any questions.
I think, Jennifer, as we mentioned earlier today, all of the Superior Court judges are on a 4-year election cycle, and they make it easy for judges to remember when that happens by making it coincide with the Summer Olympic and the presidential election years. So I think Judge Siegel would be in his position, assuming he's not been opposed initially after the appointment, to serve through the end of 24. I think, Judge Siegel, is that correct?
Not necessarily. You might have to run.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
that's correct. I have to run for retention in 2022 next year, and then, but assuming that if that's successful, the term would extend through 2024. However, this issue won't arise again because there won't be any clients during the reporting period.
Okay. So you were appointed after filing week, I guess. I know you're within the past year, but it was after filing week.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Can I just ask a question? I was trying to find the materials on this particular application, and I couldn't find them. Were they in the general packet, or was it in a separate email?
It was in the general packet that Jana sent, the very last item.
Yeah.
Well, the last one I have is named Matthew, so there may be some error on my iPad's ability to see this. So
it's Matthew Siegel.
Oh, sorry, there it is.
Yeah.
Ding dong. I saw Matthew. Okay.
And my I asked staff earlier, and they explained that because it wasn't asking for the address exemption, it didn't go in that other packet. It just went with the original file.
Right.
Exactly, and that is Jana and I have been discussing maybe some changes to that to make it a little bit easier to send you materials. So we'll be in touch about those changes. So.
Okay. Judge Siegel, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, I thank the commission for its consideration, and I also thank staff for taking the time to work through this process as a first-time person navigating this, and just being appointed staff was very helpful. And consistent with those discussions with staff, I did request a modification because I'm no longer affiliated with my firm. I don't have the ability to generate a report like this, but also, the request that every potential customer that paid $12,000 for legal services to the private firm in the past year would be a substantial undertaking for the firm. And so I explained and elaborated that to the extent that any former clients came before me, that would be addressed through recusal and the canons of judicial conduct. And I did also indicate that I did not believe there were any payments made to the firm by the King County Superior Court. I am virtually certain of that. I could confirm definitively from the firm if the commission needs that information. I did indicate that there were payments made by other King County entities, the executive side or Metro, and that I also thought that upon request, the firm would make that total amount of payments from King County other entities, if the commission wanted it for the reporting period, would make that available. I don't have it yet, but I've asked and I believe they would. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the commission has.
Questions for the judge? Hearing no questions, what is the commission's pleasure with regard to the modification?
I would move that we grant the motion for modification, or the request for modification. I believe that doing so does relieve the individual of a manifestly unreasonable hardship under the circumstances, and that it does not do violence to the purposes of the act, particularly when the Code of Judicial Conduct and the avenue of recusal are front and center for considerations.
Is there a second?
I would move that we relieve the requirement of strict adherence to the language of the statute.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to modify signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Modification is granted. Judge, thank you for your time today, and good luck.
Thank you very much to the commission. I very much appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
You too. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there anything else to come before the commission today?
Well, I would like to say to Jennifer, I want to commend you. I can tell that you've been doing some good work in weeding out some of these modification requests. I don't know that we've ever seen 100% of them being not only meritorious, but very clearly meritorious. So I have to conclude from that you're doing a good job of telling people that just articulate some very generalized concern about sharing their residential address, that's not going to cut it. And that they should not bring a motion or a request for modification under those circumstances. So hats off to you. Good work.
Thank you, Commissioner Downing. I wanted to note that throughout this particular meeting, the commission has requested information that wasn't readily available to us so that we couldn't provide it. We're making notes of those things so that we can provide them in the future, including the verification of judicial appointments. I need to do a better job of trying to determine how to get the correct information so that you have that, Commissioner Downing. So thank you for that.
I did look online during the noon hour, and I saw that Mr. Njogi is listed as a candidate for the Bethel School District, but there's an opponent. There's somebody else for that same seat. So hopefully he's not going to find himself elected to the school board, or for his sake and for others' sakes as well.
Yeah, I thank you for looking that up on your own. And I, as you heard today, the group that was part of the reconsiderations a lot of their concerns were similar to each other, where they didn't receive the notice. It's been suggested that email is not a good means of communication. However, as Peter indicated earlier, the commission made a decision a while ago, and there's a statute now that allows us to communicate with individuals by electronic means only. We do send things periodically by mail as well, but we're not required to do that. It's kind of a difficult balance. So I appreciate that.
All right. I would just add to Bill's comments that you guys have done a really good job on this today. Tabitha, Jennifer, and Jana, especially in the background, making sure all of these pieces fit together. So thank you all, and I will declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
For your time.